Attention, darts fans. After searching high and low, to and fro, from coast to coast on wine and toast, the award for best hashtag in the game goes to Dynamite Darts Content. And your winner is the weekly Dartscast, baby. 3 words: Dynamite Darts Content. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf, the first of 2 episodes this week. More on that in a moment, but first of all, I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, my co-host, darts statistician, the darts driver king, Mr. 15 darter, Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing?
Yeah, back to back 15 darters last night, the third and fourth 15 darters I've ever thrown. So I got half of them all in a space of 3 minutes. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good darts. Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Dartsmas is almost here. Looks like it's already started for you with those 15 darters, but the countdown is well and truly on, and partly to celebrate that, and also I guess to make up for not being here last week, we've got 2 episodes this week, and both episodes you're going to hear interviews from the media launch for the Kazoo World Darts Championship. You're going to hear from Michael van Gerwen on this show, and on the next show you're going to hear from Fallon Sherrock. That's all thanks to our producer Hanna, who also joins us now. Firstly, Hanna, how are you doing, and what was the experience like being part of the media launch earlier today?
Hi, I'm doing well now that I'm in from out of the rain. Typical London day, freezing cold and pouring rain. The media day was nice. It was down at Kazoo headquarters, which isn't far from King Cross Station. They did some events with the Kazoo staff beforehand in a space upstairs to kind of get their money's worth, as so to speak, before letting the team do press. But it went very smoothly, but I was also impressed by who was there, because obviously you'd expect the British press to be there. They were. You would expect that there would be some of the Dutch press and some of the German press, and they also were. I believe they said that there was a guy from the Chinese press there as well. So darts making waves around the world. For Fallon, they did her in a couple of groups to get all the international media together and the English media together, but we got our own separate media because we are podcast. Hear us roar. But yes, lots of fun, and before I left, I was gifted a Kazoo notepad and 2 pens, because apparently they can't give them away fast enough, and I also took one of their sodas.
As we mentioned, and as our listeners will hear shortly, you got to speak to the world number 3 and the women's series number 3, as you spoke to both Michael van Gerwen and Fallon Sherrock at the media launch. How was it chatting with them?
It was lovely. I have spoken with Fallon before, less interview outside of that one press scrum after the match play, but I've spoken to her before one-on-one. First time talking with Michael. Both were in good spirits. Michael a bit tired, can't imagine why, with his 3 suitcases having come up fresh from Minehead. Fallon was looking good, and both ready to do press. Because I am local, I held back until people had gaps in their time before leaving. They both seemed in good spirits. They're both looking ahead to the World Championship. Both have set themselves the goals of getting, practiced up. Obviously, Fallon has a little bit more under the gun, as she just learned that she's in the World Championships. But they're both excited for the event to take place. They're both doing well. And I am excited to see how they carry on. And as of the draw, Fallon will now be significantly more relieved than she was, because she and Cameron were having kittens that they would end up drawing each other. So
yeah, we should give a mention to the draw. And as you mentioned there, Fallon Sherrock, she was a late addition to the field, but it is the first time that we've got 3 ladies in the PDC World Championship. Fallon Sherrock going up against Ricky Evans. We've got Lisa Ashton going up against Ryan Meikle, and Bo Greaves, the debutant of the 3 ladies this year, going up against Willie O'Connor. What was your reaction to those 3 draws?
In terms of, it's a World Championship, so there should be no easy draws. But in terms of difficult draws, wow. Those are some really strong players to play against. That's not to say that I instantly believe that all 3 of them will be snowballed and just, not worth the time. It'll depend on which Ryan Meikle shows up in Lisa's case. It'll depend largely on what Willie O'Connor shows up in Bo's case. I could easily see Bo beating Willie, and I could also easily see Bo beating Gabriel. I could also see it going the other way. Willie's form has been so off and on this year. Fallon's got a tough go with Ricky Evans. If she brings her stage game that she has, that seems to have kind of abandoned her a bit this year, but if she can tap into that, she'll stand a chance. But then, even if she stands a chance with that, then it's into Joe Cullen. And you'll be hard-pressed to find somebody stronger than Joe Cullen at the moment. So they all three ended up with difficult, what I would say would be even more difficult draws than some other people got, would be my assessment of it. But I really wouldn't rule out any of them in their first-round matches. I just think of the three, the person who's most likely to have a chance of those or have less of a struggle of it will probably be Bo with her selection. But I am excited to see, and I'm hoping I will go and get to see them in person.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those matches as well. And as some listeners will hear in the next episode that we have, since we're having two this week, I've singled out that Bo Greaves, Willie O'Connor as one of the matches of the first round. But aside from the three women's players in the draw, did anything else about the draw catch your eye?
Oh boy, did it. I was looking at it, and some of them, I mean, the one that obviously everybody who's a North American darts stan, as it were, noticed was the Matt Campbell versus Danny Baggish. Could our hearts break anymore from that? Should be a good game, but also you just kind of want them both to just make it through. And there's a couple of other ones. The first round tie with Lawrence Ilagan versus Roby John Rodriguez. That one could be zesty, but I have a feeling Roby will win. But then whoever wins meets up with Dimitri, and that could be a real heck of a game there. You've got Darius Labanauskas versus John O'Shea. That could be a real heck of a match. Again, then they have to face up with Ross Smith, so I don't know how much deeper it goes, considering he's in absolutely wild form. Yeah, there's some really, really good ties there. The Daniel Larson versus Adrian Lewis. That one stood out to me. Winner goes on to play Damon Hedda, but Daniel Larson can really bring an A game that I think is on par with about where Adrian Lewis is at. So that could be a real exciting matchup as well. Hard to tell for some of the other ones, though. There's some that you just have a feeling on how they will go, but it's Dartsmiths. Are we going to be bored? Probably only the person that sits through Mickey Mansell versus Ben Robb, but God bless both their souls.
I'll be at that one on the opening night, Ali Pally, but looking forward to those matches. And before we let you go, Hannah, should just say a big thank you to you for taking out the time today to represent us at the media launch for the World Championship. Big thanks to the PDC and Dave Allen for accommodating us and inviting us. And before we let you go, Hannah, we should ask you to introduce our first guest on this episode who you spoke with earlier.
Okie dokie. Well, today's first guest is the newly crowned 7-time Player Championship Finals champion, and that is Michael van Gerwen. Michael van Gerwen, the newly crowned 7-time Players Championship Finals champion. We're less than 24 hours after you beat Rob Cross at Minehead. What did it mean to pick up that title in the way that you did? 9-darter, 170 finish?
I played it quite well, to be fair. Can't really complain, but it's a nice one to win for the 7th time. I worked hard. I think I had a good tournament. So to put it back in my pocket gives me a lot of confidence towards the World Championships.
And we saw that you were emotional on stage afterwards, talking with Dan Dawson, mentioning that your daughter had asked if you were going to bring home the big trophy.
Yeah.
Now that you've won and you know that you are bringing home the big trophy that you wanted, how does that feel to know that that's going to come with you?
But to winning trophy is always nice, and it's good for myself that it still means something to you, because it means the hunger is still there to win trophies, and that's for myself really important.
And also, with your family, just continuing that line, you have a son as well. So as a dad of 2, it sounds like your eldest, obviously with mentioning trophies, is now at a stage where she knows a little bit of what daddy does for a living.
Exactly. She starts to now understand what I do, you know what I mean? And my son, he doesn't know, sometimes, he says daddy, but for the rest he doesn't have a clue. So that's a bit different, but it's how life goes, and I've got a lovely family, and
So extra special to have her at the age where she can root along.
Now she starts to watch me on television, and that's nice.
Excellent. And starting out in darts, you obviously want to win titles for yourself. Now that you've got the family, does the motivation to carry on for them come into effect as well? I also love what I do, so for me it's not extra. I don't need extra motivation or something like that. It's my job. It's something I love to do, especially playing on the big stages. And especially when you win, when you get rewarded, it's always extra nice. And we're talking at the media launch for the World Championship, Kazoo World Championship as it were. You often get asked around this time of year if you have one eye on the World Championship yet. now that that's the next tournament on the calendar, we presume you have two eyes on it, as it were.
Of course. People, of course, after the play championship finals, the only thing what's important then is playing the World Championship and make sure you're going to win it. But don't look too far ahead of you, because it's going to be a long way and it's going to be a long 1.5 month. So you need to be prepared for anything.
And do you start that preparation immediately, or do you give yourself a little bit of a break?
I probably have some few days off, and then start my preparation for the World Championship, a few exhibitions, media stuff, just general stuff as well.
And this will be the 17th consecutive World Championship, and some will have forgotten that your first was in the BDO at Lakeside in 2007. You'd only just won the World Masters as a 17-year-old, which is still insane. You were a tournament favorite, lost out in that round. What do you remember, if anything, of that first World Championship?
My first World Championship was against Gerwen. I lost in the first round, 3-2 in sets. But after that, I of course went to the PDC, and I lost to Phil Taylor. And but that was history. Since then, I did a lot of good things as well. And you have to start somewhere.
And you moved to the PDC after that, after finishing runner-up in 2013. 1 year later, January 1st, 2014, you beat Peter Wright to get your hands on the Citadel Trophy. In fact, that was the first World Championship I ever saw, because I had just moved to this country.
Okay.
Almost 9 years ago now, what memories of that first big World Championship come back to your mind, if you think on it?
Yeah, I had a really good tournament, played really well. Of course, the final against Peter Wright was a tough one. I had to work really hard for that. Because the year before I lost the final against Phil Taylor. So you always need to learn first how to lose finals before you can be a champion. And I've learned a lot. I've hit my nose against the wall so many times, and that makes you stronger, that makes you a better dart player, as long as you keep investing in yourself and keep believing and keep working hard, then everything is possible.
And then you had your second world title in 2017 and third in 2019, arguably the most dominant of the three. You just dropped 5 sets the entire way to the final. I don't think many people could have predicted that. It's been the longest win since then. How hungry are you to reclaim the worlds again for a fourth time?
Yeah, of course, really. Of course, everyone knows I had a disaster period for myself with my injury of my hand. We had the corona times, but everything is back to normal now, and that's good for myself. I enjoy what I do, and I hope I can do some great damage and keep continuing the damage what I'm doing at the moment on the other tournaments as well, towards the World Championships. It's only good.
And like you said, last year that run ended with the positive test for COVID and having to rule out of that. Did that disappointment fire up this year overall as just things are getting back to normal, or is it the same business?
Same business. It's just another World Championship, but you need to make sure you keep your focus going. And this year, everyone can see I'm in good form, I'm sharp, I'm doing the right things at the right moment. And there's one more tournament where I have to do that, and that's the World Championships.
And before you won the title in Minehead, you'd already won the Premier League, World Match Play, and World Grand Prix this year.
Yeah.
Before we go into the Worlds, if you had to rate this year so far, how would you say it ranks on your year in terms of the highest highs, lowest lows, in terms of, you've achieved a lot. Is this one of your best years?
Yeah, I think this is one of my best years. Of course, we had 2017 or 18, I can't really remember. Was it 19 even? I can't remember. It was a really good year, but this year, it's one of my top years, of course. To win all them big tournaments, you have to play well, simple as that.
When you look at the ranking titles on TV this season, it's either been you or a first-time winner. There's been no other options. Nobody's caught another one.
Outside myself at the moment, when I'm not winning the tournament most of the time, other people close to me on the ranking not doing too well in the tournaments either. So it's been tough, and it's been a long season. But you have to hit your target sometimes, and especially when it matters, and that's what you want to.
Does that make darts now currently harder than it's ever been?
Yeah, probably. There's a lot of players who can hit 110 average these days. So you need to be prepared on everything, in every game, under every circumstance, all the time. And you can't be weak in the game somewhere, because they're there to grab you. Simple. That's how it works.
Yep. And one player who's just given a lot of attention, if you can just have a few words, is obviously Josh Rock. Came out in a close battle than the Grand Slam only a few weeks ago. You know, he's 21 years old, just won the World Youth title last night. Just what do you make of his kind of emergence and debut on the scene as somebody who also had success as a youth?
He does extremely well at the moment, and he's throwing with a lot of confidence. He also doesn't have any scars at the moment, so he's playing freely still. So I'm wondering how it goes when he had also some tough defeats to handle, you know what I mean? And that's also so, but if you're just going to look to his future, it looks bright of course, but still a long way to go for him.
And away from the World Championship, the world #1 spot is something we're sure you would like to have back. And obviously after winning last night, not sure if you're aware, but you may be aware, that right now if you win Alexander Palace, you'll be back to world #1. Is that something that you're shooting for? Does that something that feels special, holding that #1 spot?
Of course, you always want to be #1. I've been there for a long time, but in the upcoming 2 years I have to win minimum of 1 World Championship title to make sure that's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to it. That's my task, that's my goal, and that's what I have to do. Simple.
And the draw for the Worlds takes place later on today. For you, how different will the next 2 weeks in terms of preparation after your break be? Is there any specific set hours? Do you have a routine?
No. I don't have a routine. I always do the same. Just relax. Same routine. Because why would you do things different now compared to other tournaments? That means the other tournaments are not that important. I always prepare myself 100%. You can do more than 100%.
Yep. And if it's winning, why would you change the process then?
Exactly. Never change winning team.
And this is just a personal question. In terms of darts in the Netherlands, obviously, each year the World Cup team changes. There's just so many people battling it out really harsh. Is there anyone that you've kind of noticed that seems kind of up and coming that we should just be aware of?
No, at the moment, not really, to be fair. It's been a bit quiet, but you never know because a lot of guys go back to Q school, and from there on you need to see who's going to get a tour card, and there will be a lot of entries, of course, also from Holland. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to see, but I think with the players at the moment on the tour, with the Vince van der Voort and Danny Norbert and Dirk, I think we already have a big field anyway.
And just one away from the darts, we've got World Cup going on for the football. Netherlands are at the top of their group, looking good to qualify. The lads want to know, how do you rate their chances of making it through to knockouts?
At the moment, if they keep playing like this, we're not making any chance, but we need to do something better, same as England.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks again to Michael for joining us. Now, let's start our recap of the last 2 weeks. We've got the Grand Slam finale, the last 3 days of the event to look back on, and also the Players' Championship finals, which took place at the weekend. But we'll start off with our look back at the Grand Slam, and we've got another new major champion in the PDC, Michael Smith, winning the Grand Slam, a 16-5 win against Nathan Aspinall in that final. Finally gets that first major title at the 9th time of asking. How pivotal do you think this title could be for the Bully Boy going forward?
And you'll hear from him later in this show. We'll see if he agrees with me. But I'm going to take a slightly different answer than I think most people will say it. I actually don't think it's that pivotal. And the reason I say that is because this was going to happen. This was going to happen. I'm not even going to say sooner or later. It was going to happen sooner. It actually took a little longer than I thought. Because if you go back 11 months ago to the World Championship final, Michael Smith at that point in his career was ready to cross the line. And not just in any event, but in the World Championships. And it really took 10 or 11 extraordinary legs of darts from Peter Wright to deny Michael Smith. Michael Smith didn't bottle it. Michael Smith did not drop his game from a World Championship level. Peter Wright played the best darts of his life to turn that match around and to become world champion for the second time. That aside, Michael Smith was ready then. Michael Smith was ready at the European Championship. He just ran into someone else who played the match of his life in the weekend of his life. The only time anytime recently where Michael Smith looked like you could say he bottled it was the UK Open. But also the UK Open is such a long, tiring weekend. There's been a lot of finals like that where both players just didn't have it. And it does make sense at the end of that long weekend. I mean, when Nathan Aspinall won his major over Rob Cross a few years ago, both of them were well off their best in that match. And it's because it is a long, tiring weekend. And that very well could have and should have been Michael Smith's major breakthrough, but we can understand why it wasn't after what was a grueling 3 days there in Minehead. He was going to become a major champion. He's been ready, and it just so happened that time was the Grand Slam. Whether he goes on to win the World Championship, whether he goes on to win 3 majors next year, I think he would have, if he does do that, he would have done that even if he didn't win this one. So that's why I'm saying it's not all that pivotal, because this was going to happen, and I don't think it will affect his confidence or his ability to cross the line in a future major at all. That said, it doesn't change that it is significant. As even he said in the interviews, if he was a cat, he'd be on his last life. He already lost 8 major finals before this. And that does drain on you. And it is obviously a huge moment and one that should be celebrated, because he had come so close so many times, twice losing in last leg deciders, coming within 2 sets, coming within 4 legs of being the world champion. So it obviously is a monumental achievement in his career, but it is the first of many. It is the first, not just of, a couple that he could pip over course of some time. It is the first of what I think will be double-digit number of major titles. Michael Smith is the second best player in the world right now, behind only Michael van Gerwen. And Michael van Gerwen is playing very well right now. And Michael Smith is closer to him than I think he is to whoever is the 4th best player. Josh Rock, I would say, is currently the 3rd best in the world on current form. But Michael Smith is going to win double-digit majors. He's going to be near the top of the game for another 2 to 3 decades. Well, the people ranked ahead of him, like some of them at least, Peter Wright, maybe it's just another 2 to 3 years. Michael Smith will get to double figures, and this will be that first of many. But even had he not won this one, I don't think it would have made that much difference in the long run. He has been ready for a year now to become major champion. It was just a question of when. It's now happened, and he now has that, and that could never be taken away from him. But I think in 5 years, we'll have to go back and think about what was the first, because he will have won by that point 6, 7, 8 majors. He will have been a world champion at least once by then. There are so many players right now that are emerging as stars. But what makes Michael Smith different is that he is still a cut above all the rest of his peer group. This is, as I said, a monumental achievement for him, and one that should be celebrated. But I don't think it's pivotal for his career, because it was going to happen. It will happen again, and it will happen again and again and again after that. Michael Smith is a superstar. Michael Smith is one of the faces of darts and will remain so. This is just the first of many titles for him, possibly first of many just over the next few months.
I think it is going to be interesting to see how we look back on that week at the Grand Slam for Michael Smith in terms of his career in a few years' time. But I mean, to get that monkey off his back, and it's been a question that's been thrown at him so many times over the last 4 or 5 years since he started making these major finals, and probably since before then, when he had that breakthrough, winning the World Youth Championship, beating Phil Taylor at Ali Pali, starting to make deep runs in the majors. He's always been touted as someone that is a future major champion in waiting. And, we've said it ourselves on this show many times that it was a matter of when, not if, he got that first major title. And a lot of people have also said that once he gets that first one under his belt, he's going to take some serious stopping. And you think back to that World Championship final against Peter Wright in January that you mentioned, and on stage afterwards, Peter Wright was saying that once Michael gets that first title, we're all in trouble, and it remains to be seen if that is going to be the case. We've just seen him play in the Players' Championship finals, and I guess it's always hard after getting that first one to then go again just a few days later. There'll have been a lot of media commitments, a lot of people that would have wanted a piece of Michael Smith in the days after that, and then to go again 5 days later would have been tough for him. But he has got a few weeks now to let it all sink in and go for the biggest one of them all, the World Championship. But as we go into that and all the other events next year, we will see if he is able to back up that Grand Slam and start to tick off these major titles and really start to build up the CV that his game and the potential that he's shown for a long time deserves. And you look back to the final 3 days of the Grand Slam, we did an episode after the last 16, and we were looking ahead to the final few days of it. And Michael Smith, what a game he had in the quarterfinals with Joe Cullen. It was a back and forth game, but he went 15-13 down, and what does he do? His back is against the wall, 15 darter to hold, a 70 finish, 1 dart at tops, and Joe Cullen was sat on 8 for the match. Then he breaks in 11 darts, holds throwing 15 darts to get over the line, and yeah, it was a special comeback, those last 3 legs to get over the line, and the confidence must have been extremely high then. And in the semi-finals against Raymond van Barneveld, steamed off to a 5-0 lead. Barney brings it back to 10-all, 12-all, and Michael Smith runs off the last 4 legs, 11-14, 13 and 14 in the final, 50% on the doubles. That was the stat that really caught the eye for me. And from 10-5 to go that next session win 5 legs, really pull away 15-5, and to have that little break, come back and win that last leg, it couldn't have gone much better for him to get over the line. But yeah, he has got that first major title under his belt. We'll see how pivotal this title is going to be going forward. But for Michael Smith, I think to get that first one, get that monkey off his back, it's going to be huge for him. He was a confident player regardless of all the major final defeats. He's someone that's always said that he's never given up hope at any point. He's always had that belief that that first title, that first big title, is just around the corner. And now he's ticked it off. Yeah, we're going to see how many more he can get in the years ahead.
Now, when we last recorded, it was right before the quarterfinals of the Grand Slam. But what is your overall reflections on the tournament as a whole? Anything else that stood out for you?
Well, first of all, I've got to say the next session that we saw after we recorded that top half quarterfinals, the Raymond van Barneveld, Gerwen Price, Michael Smith, Joe Cullen games were 2 superb quarterfinals. And after that night, I was starting to think maybe we've got a bit of competition for the best ever quarterfinals in the Grand Slam as a whole set of 4. But I don't think they quite edged the 2020 selection in the end. But those 2 games were quality games. Barney beating Gerwen Price 16-13 and both players playing really well in that one. And Price was running away with it at one point, Barney coming back. And I think for Barney fans, you've got to be quite excited about how he performed in that game, especially coming from behind. It's always something that we've said about Barney, is that when he does fall behind by quite a bit, the head drops, he starts to shake his head, but stuck at it. And to come back and beat the world number 1 the way he did was a very impressive performance for him. And okay, fell short in the semi-finals, but it's his best run that he's had in a ranking major for almost 5-6 years. So for him to do that in this comeback is great for him. And he's got at least another year, many more years, you'd say, on the tour, the way he's playing in the last few weeks. And I've already mentioned the Michael Smith-Joe Cullen game, but that was a really good game. And we should give a mention to Nathan Aspinall. It's a second major final for him in as many months, and beating Alan Suter. It was his first appearance in a major quarterfinal. That was a fairly close game, 16-12, and that was the exact same scoreline in the semi-final against Luke Humphries, who got to another major semi-final. We've just seen him repeat that at the Players' Championship finals at the weekend. And a word for Luke Humphries as well, beating Michael van Gerwen 16-10 in that other quarter-final. And to beat Michael over that distance, okay, he's had a few wins over him in the past in majors on the Euro Tour, but to do it over that length is that's going to stand him in good stead going forward as well. But I think really overall, as I look back on the tournament, it's a debate which has cropped up again, and it is the 2 semi-finals were close, but the final, again, was a pretty one-sided affair, wasn't it? And that's 3 of the last 4 years we've seen it be a one-sided final. And the outlier in that is, of course, 2020, and that final behind closed doors was played on another day. We didn't have the final and semi-finals played on the same day. So for me, I think that is something that the PDC have got to look at. I think we've got to go to making the semi-finals on one day and the final on the final day. And I think there's probably 2 ways they could do that, and that is if they started it a day earlier, maybe a Friday night, and brought every session forward, or you cut the quarterfinals back, you put them to maybe 1st to 10 or maybe a little bit further on, 1st to 11. But I think, yeah, if you want to make this Grand Slam one of the key events, the big events on the calendar, you don't want to see a one-sided final every year, and we've seen it for 3 of the last 4 years. So for me, that's got to be something that's got to be looked at for next year.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there about maybe shortening the quarterfinals to spread it up. I hadn't thought of that idea, but I have thought of ways that you could change the calendar to get the semifinals and final to be on different days. I think that's something to think about in future years. How can you change that so that the players aren't? I mean, we do see events where players are playing semifinals and finals on the same day or even the same session, but those are shorter matches. To have to play 2 best out of 31s is a long 2 really, really long matches. And especially for the players who were on the half that also had to play the day before in the quarterfinals, it can be really draining on you. But I agree with most everything you said there. I thought we were really looking at an historically good tournament up until the final, really. There were the group stage was gripping, obviously. So many 10-8 matches in the last 16, and we talked about that on our last show. But then you had 2 remarkable quarterfinals on that Friday night. And, Burton, Price, was up 8-3, and Raymond van Barneveld won 11 of the next 13 legs to turn that match around, to win 11 out of 13 against the world number one. And yes, okay, Gerwen Price made some mistakes, but Barney was always there to punish, and Barney forced Gezi into those mistakes, and that's why he turned that match around, and that's why he's now in the top 32 in the world. And we'll talk about that another time, but I'm trying to remember what he did the last time he was the number 32 seed at the World Championship. I can't remember, but it was this huge run and that huge comeback against the world number one that got him there in the end. And then Michael Smith, you mentioned on the last question, that match against Joe Cullen very well as the match of the year, or at least a contender for it, especially coming back and what it ended up meaning in the end when he went on to win the title. The other two quarterfinals weren't as good. Alan Suter had plenty of chances to beat Nathan Aspinall, but he just kept going to double 18 and he kept missing double 18. And that match easily could have been 16-12 the other way around. If of the two, Suter's probably the one who you could say looked the more likely player throughout most of that match. He just couldn't finish off legs. And that's not to take anything away from Nathan Aspinall. It was just Suter was putting himself in position almost every leg and just couldn't get over the line too many times, and Aspinall took advantage and won that match. And Michael Van Gerwen he fell behind. Luke Humphries punished him at almost every opportunity, and Michael Van Gerwen just didn't look like the player he's been for the last 4 or 5 months. Those two things combined meant he had no chance. Luke Humphries, I wouldn't say he was on song, but he didn't do much wrong. Michael Van Gerwen didn't do much right. There was only going to be one winner in that match, and what I think both would have expected to be a much higher quality and much tenser affair than it turned out to be. Semifinals, neither really seemed in doubt. It was a similar story where Luke Humphries just didn't seem on his game. Raymond van Barneveld always seemed second best, but again, credit to Barney. He kept in there, even though he looked half the player that Michael Smith was. He took every chance that he created to stay in that match. Just Michael Smith was too good for him in the end. And in the end, Nathan Aspinall, as you mentioned, as everyone else has said, had nothing left in that final. I thought it was a very good tournament, especially up until the last day, but it doesn't rival that one from behind closed doors in the end. That said, it's still been one of the best tournaments start to finish so far this year. It was a very good Grand Slam of darts with the most deserving of champions.
You mentioned the most deserving of champions. Let's hear from him now. Here's our chat with the newly crowned Grand Slam of darts champion, Michael Smith. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned Grand Slam of darts champion, Michael Smith. Thanks for the time, Michael. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Still soaking it up, but everything's good.
Yeah, still soaking it up. It's been a little over a week and a half now since you ended your wait for a first major title in the PDC, winning the Grand Slam, lifting the Eric Bristow Trophy in Wolverhampton. What have the last 10 days been like, your first days as a major champion?
I didn't really get time to enjoy it, especially with the Players' Champs right around the corner. But I can't even say I had a shocker that I know I got beat first game, but still had a 99 average, lost 6-5. But yeah, now it's over and I've got a couple of weeks till the Worlds. It's starting to feel better because now I can reflect on it a lot more. That's why I'm practicing and stuff like that, just thinking I finally got one. There's no more what if, I finally got it now, so it's been helping me a lot now. And
obviously you've got the trophy back home as well. How often do you go and have a look at it and think, yeah, this is mine?
I haven't got it. Actually, I've got the small one. The big one, I actually took it to my mum's pub where I practice. So people have been coming in and getting pictures with it and stuff. So I'll see if I go to practice, but it's in the office now. So when someone comes in and asks for the picture, they get it. But yeah, I'll let them have it for probably till the World Champs start, and then I'll bring it home then and put it where it belongs.
Well, we'll come back to the Grand Slam later, but let's circle back to when we last had you on the show. It was at the start of the season, just before the Masters, and you weren't yet confirmed for the Premier League, but you did get that recall, and it was the first year that we've had the new format. What was the general reaction in the back room among the players in those first few weeks with that new format?
I liked it. I don't really speak to players when I'm there. There's a couple, Johnny and Joe, who I got on well with. We all loved it. And I think it was great. I know it worked out weird sometimes. I could play Van Gerwen in its semis 6-7 weeks on the spin. If you win your first game, but it's only 8 plays, you might get that. You can't mix it up so much. But it is good you don't just practice for 3-4 hours for one game and then go home. You can actually be there all night and bag yourself 10 grand as well for the night. So it was good. I enjoyed it, and hopefully I'm in it again next year to do it again.
Yeah, I think you've got a good chance of getting back in it next year. And the first major of the season, that followed soon after with the UK Open. You threw a 9-darter on the way to making it through to the final day, and you started that Sunday with a win against Gerwen. How were you feeling going into the final session on that Sunday night in Minehead?
I felt great, and then I think when I played, I think it was Keane Barry in the semis, I didn't think I had anything in me, like I was knackered. I think I was like 6-2 down or 6-3 down. 6-2 wasn't, then I reeled off the next 8 legs playing unreal. And then, I got to the final, and I think you seen what happened. There was just nothing left in the tank. I was nervous, and it turned into a scrappy game, which it shouldn't have been. But that was in the past now, and then just got to look forward to the next few events.
Yeah, you lost out in the final in a decider, but a few days later you're making another final, this time one of the nights in the Premier League, and Michael van Gerwen, he said afterwards, it's only a matter of time before you win that major, simple as that. And you went on to win some more titles on the floor, and that kick-started an impressive run. You won the last night of the Premier League, a Euro Tour, the US Darts Masters in New York. We'll touch on that Euro Tour to begin with, because that was in the Netherlands. You beat Danny Noppert in a decider in that final against his home crowd. How much did that win mean to you?
Yeah, it meant a lot, especially on the Thursday night winning in Newcastle, because I was only 1 on a 0 in the Premier League for night wins, so they took the monkey off my back. And then I went to Amsterdam. I think I played 3 or 4 Dutch people on the way, so I had a decent crowd always with on my side. But yes, and I went to a last leg shoot. I was like, he's not doing it again. Not in a cut space of a couple of weeks, not doing it again. And I just put my foot down, a couple of 140s, and applied the pressure to him. And luckily enough, I needed the 1 dart to finish it this time.
And then the following weekend, you add to your collection of World Series titles, winning at Madison Square Garden. That was an event which has been a long time in the making for a few years. What did you think of New York?
I loved the venue. It was iconic being in Madison Square Garden, just thinking about people who'd been there. But I'm not a city person. New York's not for me. It might be for other people. I don't think I liked it. It's too fast paced, too busy. I'm just more of a country person where I like walking at my own pace, not being rushed. But apart from that, it was amazing to be there. It was a really good experience, and hopefully I get to defend it next year. And it went on the mantelpiece nice out, and just got me settled a bit more in the year, especially losing the Worlds and then the UK, and then finally to lift the first TV title of the year, not the ranked major, but it was the first TV title of the year. Kind of settled me in for the rest of the year then.
Yeah, there's been plenty of titles coming your way. That one, you had another one on the floor. That made it 5 for the year, which was already a personal best for you in terms of senior PDC titles. Did you think then it was only a matter of time before you got over the line in a major as well?
Yeah, I think I did 6 nights on the road, 6 events on the road where I won. 3 plays on the spin, the European Madison, and the night at the Prem. So it was at the minute I was the best player in the world at that for the 4 or 5 weeks. No one was getting close to me, and then I had a dip, as they always do when it's coming up to the World Cup, the Grand Prix and the World Cup. I was like, you can't do this now. And then I made another final. I was like, no, my game's still learning. It's coming. Just don't try and rush it. Don't get disheartened or angry with yourself. Just keep focused, and you eventually get it. And luckily enough, it did.
And it almost came in the major just before the European Championship, a third major final of the year. Some big performances in there. The game against Josh Rock, winning it on the ball with the 1-2-1, beating Luke Humphreys, Dirk van Dijvenbode, but meeting Ross Smith in the final, who played out of his skin in that game. And you said yourself afterwards, I've just got to keep going. There's not much I did wrong in that final. But how did you keep that belief going when some others might have started to think it might never happen?
If you ask my wife, I'm blessed with forgetting things very easily. She can tell me something I can forget within 30 seconds. Yeah, after when I played Ross, I had 102, 103 average. There's not much more. Obviously, I can average 110 plus. But you're in a final, and for 4 legs of left tops, he's checked out 2 1-2-1s, a 1-2-4, and a 1-3-3. And he beat me 11-9, was it, or 11-8? That could have been easily 11-7 to me if it would have missed them, but just gotta forget about it. And I've been there 8 times previously, and I've lost in 8 finals. It's not like it was my first and you think, no, what, I'm happy to be here. Second, you think now it's becoming a thing. Third one, you think he's taking the piss now. And you get a beat in his final. Yeah, you just gotta keep believing you do it. And I've been in 5 finals from 2021, to 2022, I've been in 4. So obviously some of it was right, and I kept believing that I will. Once I get that next chance at winning double, I'm not going to miss it. And yeah, best history now.
Yeah, the major finally comes at the Grand Slam, one of your favourite tournaments you've said in the past as well, and I've got to start with that quarter-final against Joe Cullen, 15-13 down. You win the last 3 legs to pinch it, 16-15, winning legs in 15-11 and 15. The 2 15-darters, you only had 1 dart at a double, and you took both of those chances. How much confidence do you take away from a game closing out here like that?
I know, I seen Joe's reaction after the game. He was obviously disappointed that he lost, but I was trying to tell myself, even at 15-13, Joe should never been in that position. It was my own doing why he's there. And I was like, all you've got to do now, it's your dad, you only have to break him once. Just play perfect golf. A par putt on my throw and a birdie on his. Went out in 15 for the par, and then, sub 12, which gave me the birdie. I knew if I broke him to a 15-all, I'd won the match. Because I think, was it my dad? He did 2 180s? 15-13, if I could check out here now, we'll go. And then I'll be on the up then, because I know I've got him. And he hit a 2, and then I checked out 64 or something, or 80. It was somewhat weird. And then, his throw went out in 11. I thought, he'll go now. Just got to keep going. And then I kicked off with a 125 and a 140. I thought, you absolute beauty. So, I timed my thing to be fair. I didn't mean to do it, but it looked like I timed it to the absolute inch, because I knew if I lost, I was out. But I just started to play perfect darts.
Yeah, you couldn't have timed it any better. And the final day on the Sunday, you get past Raymond van Barneveld 16-12, just the 17 180s in that game. And against Nathan Aspinall, you run away with it, winning 16-5. And at 10-5, you win that next session 5-0, go off stage 15-5 up. What were those few minutes break like, knowing you were on the cusp of that first major? You could almost touch it.
Yeah, I went off with goosebumps, stand up on your arms. And then I saw him getting angry with himself because he went off before me. And then he started head down, biting his top and everything. And he just slumped in his chair, and I was like, why, you 15-5 up, you can't even piss this up. There's no way you can miss it. I was like, and then he missed 3 darts, a double 10, I think, and double 5. I was like, you know what, just get this one. You got 56, you're not missing tops. I think every time I'd left to finish, she went in. And I was like, you're not missing this. And that double top went straight in the middle. If I would have missed that first dart, I might have started thinking then, I'm going to miss again. But went straight in. I was like, just trying to convince myself I don't miss, I'm not going to miss. Yeah, so I think I found the key to why I've been missing doubles and why I've not.
Yeah, 50% on the doubles in a game of that length as well got you over the line, and we saw what it meant to you as well, sinking to the floor. You got to share that moment afterwards with your wife and kids as well. Just how special was that night, and adding your name to the list of PDC major winners?
Yeah, I think you see when I fell, it was relief, and thank God it's finally done. That's why when I was going to run to my kids, and my legs just went. I didn't mean to go to the floor, it just happened. Everything the past couple of years, and obviously this year, especially with the finals, just come out of them, and it was finally it's done. It happened. I was finally now I can settle down. All you lot, you journalists and everything, guys, you've lost 8 major finals. You think you'll ever win one? So all your questions got bucketed up after the Grand Slam. It was happy now. Everyone can get off my back and leave me alone, and it just proved me right and proved everyone else wrong.
Definitely. We'll come back to some of them predictions in a moment, actually. And just going back to you starting out in darts, obviously, like many young kids dreaming of playing on the stage, and yourself, you've believed that you could win one of those major titles for a long time, probably longer than anyone else. What does it mean to you after all those years of practice, travelling, the sacrifices that go into it as well, to have lifted that title?
Just proves that if you don't quit and you never give up, as long as you give 100% while you're practicing, you give 100% on stage, then you can't do things half-hearted. You've got to do it full stop. And I've always done it. Every year I've improved. If I've not improved my darts, I've improved the mental side of it. I've improved not giving up on stage or dropping my head or showing emotion. I've been improving on different things year on year out, and I think this year I finally got most things clicked into one. It's just about finding a middle ground now, because I'm either really good at scoring and bad at doubles, or mediocre at scoring but amazing at doubles. It just needs to click now where I'm constantly good at both. And once I'm good at both, I know 100% I'll be world number one, best player in the world.
Well, one last one on the Grand Slam before we'll look ahead. And you said on Sky afterwards you got to the venue at 9:05 on that Sunday morning before your semi-final. And for you, Nathan, it was a first experience of playing in a Grand Slam final, the 2 long games in a day. Nathan said afterwards he was running on empty. Do you think the schedule should be looked at for the Grand Slam, the semi-finals, final maybe played on separate days?
I don't know, because even when I play Pro Tours, I get there for 9 o'clock. But you're only playing best of 11 and then obviously best of 15 in the final. You finish around about 6, so you have got a lot of time to sit and chill in between. But when I'd finished against Raymond, I think it was like 10 to 3 when I actually got upstairs, but then they had media to do. So it was around about 3:15 I finished. So I thought, if I go back to my hotel now, which is 40 minutes away, that's 4 o'clock. Yeah, my maths is bad here. That's 4 o'clock. And then if I got food, it's going to be around about half an hour before it comes out. So 20 minutes eating it. You're getting close to 5 now. I had to pull up again at 6. I had to be in the venue before 6. So if I would have left my hotel at 5, I would have only got there for 22, depending on traffic. So I was like, I can't go anywhere. So I just stayed in the venue. I got some food from downstairs, and I just sat there and I watched Nathan play his game. And yeah, I was almost falling asleep. Just trying to drunk a lot of Red Bull and water, just try to wake me up just about an hour and a half before the game. Literally, I had about 3 cans of Red Bull, and I think it started to kick in after the first session, because I started to wake up and my heart started pounding. I drunk that much, but yeah, I don't think it should be changed. But the only thing I think they should change about the Grand Slam is the way I finished first and Joe Cullen finished second in the group, and then we met again in the quarterfinal. No other sport you play each other from the group. So I think it's like a final in it or something like that. You don't even meet again. I think that's the only thing that needs changing in the Grand Slam.
Well, you might be getting a sponsorship with Red Bull, considering you've mentioned them there. Off the board, obviously, there's always a team behind a player, and you've been with Darting Promotions for a few years now, Unicorn much longer than that. What has their support meant to you, and how much has it helped you on the run that you've had this year?
Yeah, from Unicorn, I get messages from like Edward and Richard and obviously Matt Rankin and stuff, like just wishing me all the best and that. But yeah, Pritch, Darting Promotion, Mark, he's been a godsend really. He does everything for me. Literally, if I tell him I'm going to the toilet, can you come and wipe my backside? He would. Like, he's literally, everything is done. Like, I need this paying, I need this doing. Can you sort me car insurance out? Can you sort me MOT? It's not just darts, he's actually looked after me life as well, really. He's been unreal, and like, I have my dad working for me now, so he drives for me. So literally, I only have to. Well, in the past, I've had to do everything myself, like book my flights, book hotels, drive myself, and yeah, now I turn up to events. I'm like, to ask my dad where's my darts, because he's got all of my darts. I'm really there to actually play darts now and throw darts. So I think I finally got a perfect team behind me, and yeah, I think it's helped massively lately.
Happy days. Well, when we last had you on the show, you were chatting with my co-host Burton, and he mentioned our 2 predictions for the year. I said that you'd win 1 major this year. Burton said that you'd win 2, and your response was, I think, a bit tongue-in-cheek, that we were both wrong and that you'd win 3. And okay, we've only got the World Championship left now, but who's going to be right? Is it going to be me saying 1, or is it going to be Burton saying 2?
If you count the US, it'd be me with 3. Hopefully, I always say in every interview, I just want to turn up to any event and compete. I'm not Van Gogh, I'm not Peter Wright. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, you're not good enough, I'm going to smash you off the board, I'm going to do this. I'm just there to compete, and we all know if I'm there competing and I'm playing at a really good level, I'll be in the final. And yeah, as long as I'm competing, I'm happy. So I won't say I'm going to do this and that. I'll be competing, I'll be there having fun.
That's fair enough. Well, yeah, all eyes are now on Ali Pali, the World Championship just 2 weeks away now, but one player who's not going to be there is your good friend Ian White. How surprised were you to see him miss out, and do you think he can bounce back next year? Yeah,
I'm gutted he's not there. He's like, I'm with him virtually every day practicing. I've not been with him for the last 3 weeks though, obviously with the Grand Slam and the players. But yeah, he'll bounce back, he always does. Like, every setback is always a comeback, so I hope he does, as long as he keeps practicing with me, or if he chooses practice on his own, he'll come back, no doubt.
And lastly, before we let you go, we saw that you tweeted last night a picture of one of your boys holding the World Cup and that he knows where it's coming. So is football coming home?
I hope so, yeah. We've got 2 chances. But one's on tonight. We've got England or Poland. So hopefully one of them brings it.
Well, Michael, always a pleasure to chat. We appreciate your time and congratulations on winning that first major title, and we wish you all the best for the World Championship when it comes around as well.
You're welcome, mate. Thank you.
Thanks again to Michael for joining us, and let's carry on our recap of the last few weeks. And looking back at the weekend just gone, in Minehead, a record extending 7th Players' Championship finals title for Michael van Gerwen. He hits a 9-darter and a 170 in the final on the way to beating Rob Cross, and he was fairly emotional afterwards on stage after winning that final. Does he go to Ali Pali as the player to beat this year?
I think you have to say he does. I mean, that doesn't mean that he can't and won't be beaten. Granted, he wasn't beaten last year because he had to pull out due to COVID, but that's probably not going to be a problem this year. I think he is the player to beat, and he, should be the player to beat because he's won the Players' Championship. He's won the Premier League. He's won the World Match Play. He's won the Grand Prix. He's been the most likely player this year to win the majors. And yes, he's been defeated. And yes, he very likely can be defeated there at the World Championship again. But I can't see how you can't. I can't see how you couldn't say that he's the player to beat. He has been the player of the year. The only player that I could see stealing player of the year in our post World Championship awards from him would be if either Luke Humphries or Michael Smith won the World Championship and Michael van Gerwen goes out early. Even if van Gerwen goes and loses the quarterfinals and one of them wins it, I think he still should be player of the year. He's had that good of a season, and he only is coming in with off of a major success. What could have he been beaten in the Players' Championship final? Yes. Cameron Menzies had him against the wall in the first round. It was 4-all. Missed a bunch of darts at double to go 5-4 up. And I mean, who knows what would have happened over the next 2 legs had he checked that out. Very well that Van Gerwen still would have held, and then Van Gerwen would have broken in 10 darts and won at 6-5. We will never know. But Menzies had that chance in that early on, and things might then have been different. But Michael van Gerwen is going to come in as a major champion yet again. He's going to come in with confidence. He's going to come in knowing that he's now playing at the level needed to be world champion. He is the player to beat. He can be beaten, and we'll talk about that over our next couple of shows as we preview the World Championship. So he's definitely not a foregone conclusion, but he is and should be the player to beat. And if he becomes world champion for the 4th time, it really, really would not be that surprising.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the weekly Dartscast Player of the Year, because there's going to be a lot of big silverware being handed out over the next few weeks and months ahead, but none bigger than that weekly Dartscast Player of the Year. And that is one of our questions of the week that we've put out, and it is, who do you think is going to win that Player of the Year title this year? And looking at how the poll's going at the moment, it's going to be open for the whole week on our Twitter page, so do go on there, have your say. And Michael van Gerwen, is he going to win it? 83% of our listeners are going with yes. And you mentioned a few players there that if they were to win that Silverdale Trophy, they could maybe steal that title from Michael van Gerwen, Luke Humphries, Michael Smith. I'll throw Josh Rock in there as well. He's just won the World Youth Championship on Sunday last night when we were recording this with that 104 average, a record for that tournament's final. And the year that he's had, first year on the tour, has been mightily impressive. And if he was to go and win that title, he could be the one to sneak that Player of the Year title. But as far as Michael van Gerwen, he was very emotional afterwards on stage and talked about his family as well. And you think about how long Michael's been playing the game, and he was hitting 9 darters, winning major titles 2006, 2007 times, so 15, 16 years ago. And probably back then the motivation for him was to do it for himself, to prove to the world that he is the best player in the world. And he may be your number 1 of all time right now, but if he's not, he's probably your number 2. So he's done a pretty good job of that so far, and he's not done yet, as we've seen this year. And okay, the big motivation now, the extra motivation, if you like, is coming from his family, being a dad now as well. But you look at the year that he's had, and he's got back to winning major titles. You think back to this time 12 months ago, we were going into the World Championship, and for the first time in a long, long time, Michael van Gerwen was going into it not holding a major title, but this year he's got the Premier League, he's got the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, now the Players' Championship finals as well. He's won the most senior titles out of anyone in the PDC this year, but he has had a few scares along the way, and even the final on Sunday night against Rob Cross, he got into that 7-3 lead. Rob Cross, what a comeback he was starting to put on in that third session. He won 3 legs on the spin, got it back to 7-6, missed 2 darts to go 7-all, and what does Michael van Gerwen do? Pulls out that 170 finish, and that really did turn the tide in that final, and he went on to win it fairly comfortably in the end. I think 11-6, 11-7, something like that. But there are moments when Michael does switch off, and they're the moments that the players are going to have to capitalise on. But you've got to say there's not going to be anyone more confident in that 96 player field than Michael van Gerwen. He is the favourite with the former title sponsors of this event, William Hill 11-4, Gerwyn Price is next, the world number 1 at 6-1, then Michael Smith 7-1, Peter Wright, the defending champion 8-1, and Josh Rock in his debut 14-1. But yeah, I think Michael van Gerwen, out of all 96 players, he is going to be the player to beat. He says himself, he said it many times before, that people have got to play well to beat him, and to be fair, they have done it at Ali Pali, aside from last year, as you mentioned, having to pull out due to the virus. But in previous years, it has taken some special efforts to get him out of Ali Pali. You think Dave Chisnell a couple of years ago, Peter Wright in the final the year before that. So yeah, we've seen it happen before, but there is going to be no player with more confidence, with more silverware under their belt this year going to Ali Pali, and that makes Michael van Gerwen a very dangerous player.
Now, we'll be back later this week with a dive into the Ali Pali draw, and we'll be back over the next couple weeks to preview the World Championships in even further detail. But one thing we did promise to talk about on our next podcast was the PDC's announcement regarding the Women's World Match Play winner now being awarded a spot in the World Championship field each year, starting with this year's winner, Fallon Sherrock. There's been a lot of talk about it on social media, especially since Fallon was caught at the end of the Women's Series for one of those spots by Bo Greaves. Week on now from the announcements, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm not sure why people are talking about this now. In all seriousness, it's got a lot of debate, hasn't it, on social media? And I think probably fair to say that the timing, more than anything, from darts fans is why they may be a little bit annoyed by it, I think. And some fans probably feeling like it is trying to shoehorn Fallon Sherrock into the World Championship. But you think back to this decision, and we spoke to Matt Porter, I think the start of October, and one of our listener questions was, where's that vacant Ali Pali spot going to go this year? And I think he said they're exploring options at the moment. Asia was somewhere I think they were hoping to get a qualifier on. We have got the Asian tour coming back next year. I don't think that's something we've spoke about on the show, but that's been announced over the last few weeks. That is coming back next year. But I think due to the restrictions at this time, they weren't able to get another qualifier on out there. So they were looking at other options. And I think that the Women's World Match Play spot, maybe there is an argument that if Eileen de Graaf would have won that final against Fallon, would the PDC have been as upfront as dating back to this year's winner, putting them in the World Championship? It's a question you've got to ask the PDC. If someone could ask them and get the answer, I'd be interested to know. But I think looking at the bigger picture, it's great for women's darts, isn't it, to get that extra spot in the field for the World Championship. You've got 3 women in the World Championship this year. You've got the top 2 from the Women's Series. You've got the Women's World Match Play champion. And the PDC have said this isn't going to be a one-off thing. This is going to be something that is going to carry on into next year. And you think they've also announced there's more Women's Series events next year. There's the increase in prize fund for those events as well, the extra spot in their biggest event. It's all good for women's darts. And it's good to see the PDC, that the biggest darts organisation there is, expanding, increasing their interest in the women's game. But looking at how it's been announced, that the timing of it, I think, is probably the big thing that people have been annoyed about. And you think back to the last weekend of the Women's Series, we were all invested in it, weren't we? That battle for that last spot, second spot, we all thought that was going to be, it was only going to be one of those 2 players, Bo Greaves or Fallon Sherrock, that were going to get to Ali Pali. And we were seeing Bo Greaves going on this incredible run of wins, tournament wins, winning 8 titles in a row, beating Fallon in that penultimate final, which saw the 2 players switch places. And it was one of the best games we've ever seen in the Women's Series. And you think of the stakes that were on offer in that game. And yeah, it's hard not to feel a little bit cheated, really, if the PDC's plans were all along, however they finished, Fallon was going to get it in via the Women's World Match Play, or maybe they'd have said if Fallon would have finished second, third place, we'll get the spot. We'll never know. But I think, yeah, going forward, the bigger picture, it is great to see that the 3 spots, but I can see the argument for why maybe Fallon's been shoehorned into this tournament. But going forward next year, the Women's World Match Play, the winner of that is going to get a spot. And you think that the top 8 that get into that, it's an afternoon event, one afternoon, 3 games. The players that qualify for that probably going to be fancying their chances, aren't they? That the Women's Series is a long year going through all those events, but a one-off event, if you can qualify for it, you win 3 matches, you're going to be an alley-pally. So, yeah, I think going forward, it's big for the women's game. And we just got to hope Fallon Sherrock, she can block out the outside noise from social media and put on a good performance at alley-pally next month.
Well, I don't know how much they'll be fancying it because the last 8 one-off events have been won by Bo Greaves, and Bo Greaves. And we'll see. Obviously, anything can happen in any given tournament, but I think they'll be a very heavy and deserved favorite when the Women's World Match Play rolls about next summer. But yeah, the timing of it was the problematic thing, because it really did then look like you were trying to shoehorn Fallon into the field. And had Fallon held on to second, would things have been different? Would have they given a 4th spot to the PDPA tour card holder qualifier? I don't know. There's only a few people in the world who know, and they will never tell us. But it does come across the way that they were trying to shoehorn Fallon in. And there's nothing against Fallon. This is just, the facts of how it does appear. That's how it does appear. This is something that the announcement, I think, should have been earlier. Should it have been before the Women's World Match Play? I mean, ideally, yes, but realistically, no, because as Matt Porter has said every year when we've had him on, what the international qualifiers are is a developing process over the course of the year, especially in COVID times. Where can the PDC put on events? Where can they organize, find local groups that are willing to put together these qualifiers? And the demand is also there for those qualifiers to fill up 32 spots. Granted, some of those are going to other things. Some are going to the tour card holder qualifier, the Women's Series, Challenge Tour Development Tour. But overall, there's 32 spots to fill, and it's not something that you'll know necessarily by mid-July whether those 32 spots are accounted for or not. But to have it be so late, when it's probably been known for at least a few weeks, if not a few months, that there was this extra spot. And then suddenly, right after Fallon failed to finish in the top 2 of the Women's Series, now the announcement is made, well, she's going anyway. Seems a bit contrived. That said, is it justified? Well, she is the biggest draw in women's darts. She is one of the biggest draws in darts, full stop. She is going to get eyes on the television, and she's going to get darts in the media. And no matter what you say, that is something that is important for the PDC and should be important, because in most of the world, it is still a niche sport. Even in Great Britain, it is only a low-end mainstream sport. It is not football. It is not cricket. It is not rugby. It is something that is put on secondary channels, if at all. And that means having someone there who will get it attention is important, even if it's at the expense of one tour card holder or someone else. It does look fishy. The timing of it does seem to indicate the PDC wanted her there, but at the same time, she brings more value than any other player would. And that's just a fact that has to be acknowledged. So I don't know for sure. It does seem like she was shoehorned into this tournament, but again, the tournament is better with her there because it's going to bring more attention, more positive attention, and more eyeballs to darts, and that is only a good thing now and in the long run. Anything else for this show?
As always, got to say a big thank you to our guests for joining us, to both Michaels for their time. Thank you everyone for listening, to our sponsor Dartwolf as well. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, head on over to dartwolf.tv, give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180, and keep a tabs on our social media as well. We have got a sweepstake again. A few people have asked us. We are going to be running a sweepstake for the World Championship. The prize, we're just confirming what that is going to be, but keep an eye out on our social media for that and how you can enter that. And we'll be back later in the week. We've got another episode. We've got our chat via Hanna with Fallon Sherrock from the media day for the World Championship. We've also got a chat with another of the international qualifiers, Prakash Jiwa, ahead of his debut. That was from a few weeks ago. We're going to be bringing you that on the show as well. But until then, you've not really got any darts to enjoy unless you're going to go on YouTube and watch some previous matches. But you've not got too long to wait until we're going to be back again. So until then, I'll say hang tight for the next episode. And when the World Championship comes around, you can enjoy the darts again.
Yes, indeed. And as I said, it's anything else for this show, because as you said, we have another episode this week. So you'll have to hang tight for me to say anything else for this week for a couple more days until we have that episode. But just echoing everything you said, thank you, obviously, to our wonderful producer, Hanna, for taking time out of her schedule to go to the media day to speak with Michael Van Gerwen, and as you'll hear next show, with Fallon Sherrock. Also, we thank him at least once a year. We should thank him pretty much every day. Dave Allen of the PDC. He's probably the most tireless person in World Darts. He puts together all the media, everything for the media, not just us, but for everyone, and all the media events around the Premier League, the major championships. And he helped us make sure that we could get those interviews for you, as he's done for many interviews of countless players over the past 6 years. I think he deserves a special thank you, because if there's one person who personifies World Darts, it is Dave Allen. So thanking him. And obviously, thank you all for listening. We'll be back very shortly with our first of many World Championship previews as we go through our reaction to the draw. Hang tight for that, because it'll be there before you know it.